Hello, everyone. My name's Hank Sutala with Holistic Health and Healing, and I want to welcome you to our second webinar that we're doing with Don Zane Kirkman. And just before we get into the topic at hand, I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about Holistic Health and Healing and what we do. We basically bring in all types of different presenters, including Zane, and we host a lot of those out of Goddess Elite or other venues and things like that. We also have a free community calendar on our website. There's a free business directory, so you can look up pretty much anything you ever need. And there's an online store with hundreds of products, including shaman items, Florida water, that type of thing. And I have a private practice in Lakewood, Ohio, where I do sound therapy, color therapy, that type of thing. And a lot of you already know Zane from the last webinar, but Don Zane Kirkman, he's the author of Inca Mountain Magic. And most impressively, he actually founded a nonprofit or a community that is all about the preservation of folk medicine ways, which is where HooDoo really comes into place, since it's a culmination of all types of folk magic throughout different cultures. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Zane.
Hello, everyone. This is Zane. I'm very excited to get to once again speak with you in this way and talk to you about all of this very interesting subjects such as folk magic here. The type of folk magic we are talking about is something that is unique to the American experience. It is called root work or hoodoo. It's also called conjuring. And many of you may be a little uncomfortable with some of those terms because of certain ideas that were once prevalent in our culture as an early nation state. But I'm here to hopefully dispel some of that misinformation that really came from a racist and culturalist time within our nation's past. So to really talk about what hoodoo is and what this form of American folk magic is, we really have to understand where it all came from. And it came from many, many different sources. But one of the major sources was slavery, in fact. Slavery disenfranchised people, removed them from their homelands, from their home states, and put them into unfamiliar places throughout the world. As you can see, if you are seeing the presentation, you can see roughly the movement of slaves out of Africa and into the New World. Because these people were removed from their homelands and the places that they knew, the cultures that they understood, they were, many of us think they all came from one place, but the truth of the matter is the slaves were actually brought from many different nations, and they were given by the West African kingdoms. But the people who made up these slave classes were from all walks of life. Some were peasants or simple farm folk. Some were wise men and women, medicine practitioners of their traditional arts. Some were apprentices to those people, scholars, and yes, even royalty of competing tribes were imprisoned and then sold into the slave market. Of course, it was a dehumanizing experience, and especially for the Africans, we might think that they were easily able to bond together from a common heritage. But the truth is, many times they didn't speak the same language as one another, nor did they hold exactly the same beliefs as each other. As they were brought into this new world and removed from their familiar places, different medicine people, is the easiest way to say it, wanted to start to pull back together the traditional roots, because they only had themselves to look up to, and they only had themselves to go to in times of trouble. So these wise medicine people, these priests of the ancient religions, tried to recreate a new tradition here in the States. And they were helped along in this struggle to create a new culture for themselves. If you are seeing the screen at this time, you are seeing roughly the distribution of these African peoples throughout the New World. And if you can notice, up in the United States, you see a number 1 and a number 2. And this is, for the most part, all the area that HooDoo was practiced. And if you know much about our early United States, this is pretty much the entirety of what was the United States at that time. Some of this actually toward Louisiana was still owned by France. And of course, the West was owned by Spain. As the Africans were brought to these new places, they were introduced to and found camaraderie in other oppressed peoples, especially the Irish and the Native Americans. As many of you may know, and some of you may be surprised to learn, the Irish were in fact the original slaves of the New World, including Haiti, where Irish indentured servants had been sent. And for a very long time, within Europe itself, the Irish were treated as slaves and indentured servants. These three peoples all tried very hard, the Americans, to hold on to their traditions and to help others learn these traditions. As the Africans were trying to reestablish their work, their way of life, and their way of magic, we are sometimes, the title of this course was, or this class is taking the voodoo out of HooDoo. And in fact, that is a little bit unfair, but it comes from a cultural misunderstanding and racism. During the Haitian Revolution, which started in 1791 and lasted till 1804, the Haitian Revolution was started by basically a group of voodoo priests who did a ceremony to say that they would no longer be enslaved to the French of the island, and that they wanted their independence from this type of treatment. This sent shockwaves throughout the New World. A fear that this same type of revolution that happened in Haiti could happen here in the United States, or in Cuba, or in one of these other areas where slavery was prevalent. Because of that, there started a real belief that the African traditions, including the tradition of drumming, was something scary and evil. But this does honestly come from a racial bigotry that was prevalent at that time, and is not really true of these traditions themselves. Of course, in Cuba, the African tradition was called Santeria. In Haiti, it was called Voo Doo. In the Americas, it was called HooDoo. But something different about this American flavor of African spirituality was it was only the magical workings devoided from the original gods. They did still respect and honor their ancestors and call on their ancestors to help them to understand things, but they no longer, here in the New World of America, they no longer held on to the understandings and the names of their gods. So they had to find a new way of developing. But what they did have was herbalists and master magicians that knew formulas, ritual magical formulas that could be used in this new world. HooDoo is considered the African tradition or the African religion of the American South. It is also called root working, witch doctoring, and conjuring. Of course, there has been a smear campaign of all things magical that had just started to lift. For the most part, there was a little resurgence of magic in the 1930s and 40s, and then once again in the 60s and 70s. But our cultural perspective upon magic was that, one, it was either something silly and impractical, or that, two, it was something in line with evil forces. And this is how hoodoo got the reputation it has today. But magical traditions are actually a way of meeting our needs and a way of taking a greater look or metaposition at life itself. Through the allegorious use of herbs and roots, magical formulas, spells, affirmations, and the like, we are able to take a participant role in co-creating our reality. We are able to take an extrapolation and see the forces that are playing out in our lives, and to take some amount of control or some amount of co-creation with the universe at large. And we are able to rearrange some of the forces that are surrounding us to help us meet our basic needs. You're seeing right now on the screen a pyramid, and that pyramid is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And basically, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a psychological model that shows us that our needs are a type of strata, and that the physiological needs must be taken care of. Our ability to breathe, clean air, get nutritious food and water, to have relationships, to sleep. All of this must be taken care of in our lives to put us into a place where we can start to work on what we would call higher needs, such as safety, which is the security of the body, of employment, resources, morality, the family, health, and property. When the physiological needs are met and our needs for safety are met, then we are more able to develop deep and lasting friendships, and to help to bind together with other people in relationships, to have a truly cooperative type of relationship in life. That, of course, builds our self-esteem, our confidence. It helps us to respect others and to have a form of love and respect for ourselves. And all of that making a firm foundation of our needs allows us to step into self-actualization, where we can truly start working on our morality, our creativity, spontaneity, our problem solving, overcoming prejudice, and accepting the facts of life. Now, of course, though these needs need to be met, there is a little jumping around through this pyramid. Of course, not always are all of our physiological needs met before we can step into the needs of self-actualization. As many of you, I am sure, are aware that many of the most spiritual and most highly developed humans in this world live in poverty. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of security in their day-to-day life of how things are going to work out for them in the future. But they could still develop certain parts of their self-actualization, their morality, the hardship of not having all their needs met may lead them to having more compassion, more love. So this is not a strict formula that has to be followed. But when our basic needs, our physiological needs, our needs for safety, for belonging, are all met, when those basic needs are met, we are more apt and sit in a better position to feel that we can devote the time to self-development. and self-actualization. So folk magic is actually a way of taking an active role in meeting our needs. Of course, the ancient conjurers, the ancient African American, Native American, and European conjurers of this country were very impoverished. A lot of times they weren't even seen as humans, but rather property of the owners of the land. But yet they were still able to develop and feel like they were taking an active role in their life and in their development. So it is not that you need expensive things to be able to perform magic. All you really need is an open heart and to be open to the flows of living energy in our universe. So what are the elements of hoodoo and how do they play out? Before we get deep into some of the more characteristic aspects of hoodoo, I just want to say that everyone on this call has experienced hoodoo in their life or root working. Everyone on this call somewhere during life has received wisdom, has used affirmations, has burnt candles of various colors for the accomplishment of goals, have used herbs to heal themselves, have used incense to lighten the mood of a room, have gone out and understand, many of you, the cycles of nature and how they play out. And this is exactly what this folk tradition of hoodoo is. All of these things I've mentioned have been being used by the conjurers, the African American conjurers, and also the European conjurers for thousands and thousands of years. Affirmations, inspirational thoughts, inspirational poems, language, the use of perfumes and scents. If any of you have ever worn a special perfume because you thought that it was attractive to other people, well, that can be an element of what hoodoo really is. It is a kind of allegorical signature and how to arrange life through magical thinking. And magical thinking is actually a throwback to an earlier time, to a time when we lived in the jungles and in the savannas, when we understood that we were not separate from nature. And in those times, we had to rely on our instinct, on our gut, on the feelings and the thoughts, and we had to be spontaneous. Sometimes we were in woods or jungle, and for no reason whatsoever, we felt like we needed to run. So we would take off running. We would never look back to see what the qualifying factor was. We just knew we needed to run, so we ran. But oftentimes it was because we felt the energy of as some creature stalking us, a wolf, a large cat. And we did not need to see the actual creature to be in a place where we would react to the influence, because we trusted our instincts and our intuition in those times. The reason we have come away from trusting our instincts and intuitions is not because they are incorrect or more fallible than our rationality or our reason, but in fact, the reason we quit listening to that in the Western culture is because we started to develop forms of technology. And these forms of technology made it so that we had to use that rational component of ourselves to help keep safe. In other words, we no longer could just feel the inspiration or the intuition to run and then run to save ourselves. Sometimes we will do that still in our modern life, but we have to think of many other things, because sometimes running from one danger could run us straight into a highway full of other dangers in our modern world. So we had to learn to take to look at life in a new way. And that is where the uber rationality of the Western culture came from. In all actuality, we need to bring back that magical way of thinking and marry it with that rational way of thinking, marrying the two hemispheres of the brain, as it were. And in fact, one of the only ways to truly step into that bihemispherial place is through the use of ritual, ceremony, and magic. You notice I did not say meditation. Though meditation is a wonderful tool for self-development, it does not help us to completely open up that other side of our reality, as magic does, or as ceremony does, or as ritual does. Because these things are languages. They contain much more within them than what is spoken. A truly well-performed ritual or ceremony can continue to inform you of magical formula and operation for the rest of your life. You can continue to receive gold from those type of endeavors. So when developing both of our hemispheres of our brain, it is very important for us to learn to step into the world of magic once again, the world of intuition, and the world of ritual. Too often in our culture, and it can't be stressed enough, we have lost our rituals. As we have lost our rituals, we have also lost our understandings of ourself and our place in this world. Because our rituals introduce us to the world. And in ancient Africa, where the many of the conjurers that helped to create and craft hoodoo came from, the rituals were to help you to become accustomed to the environment you lived in, both the wild and the domesticated environments, and how you could relate to those spirits in nature, and how you could learn from them, and how you truly were not separate thing from nature, but actually part and partial of nature. So we'll get into a little bit more of the basics of hoodoo here. Hoodoo is an animistic belief system. And for those of you who have sat with me working in the Andean or shamanic traditions, you will remember that animism is one of the aspects of what we call shamanism. And in fact, I want to make it understood and known that what in the American South was developed that was called hoodoo is not that different from what was developed in Mexico and in South America, even in Peru, that we call curanderismo. Curanderismo is once again a mixture of belief systems of disenfranchised people. Folk Catholicism and Spanish folk magic mixing with Black ritual, African rituals, and that mixing with the native pre-Columbian beliefs. They all found a home within that catchphrase of curanderismo. Likewise, in the American South, these same type of traditions, which are a blending of Native American, European, and African magical thought and magical formula, go under the name of hoodoo. But in essence, they are very close to the same kind of belief system. In curanderismo, we have something called a resguardo, which is a little packet, a little bundle or bag that we will create for people with protective herbs, or with herbs and minerals and elements to help accomplish a goal. This is identical in many ways to the HooDoo mojo bag or the grigri of voodoo. All of these were traditions and religions of the light. The perverting factor was hatred and racism, and not within the traditions themselves. So animism is a belief that everything is alive and imbued with a consciousness. In other words, the table that you work on is alive. The room that you work in is alive. Your house is alive and has spirits to it. The land around you is alive and has spirits. Your car is alive and conscious, as so is your chair. And this might be a hard understanding to get into because of our scientific, rational view of what life is. But in this way, what we are considering life is the consciousness, is the placeholder, is the thing that makes that thing worth giving a word to. If you can give something a word to describe something, then it must be alive, in a sense, has a consciousness, has an energy vibration that it shares with the world. And in this way, we, of the Pacocuna in Peru, the shamanic traditions there, curanderismo, HooDoo, Voodoo, Santeria, all of these things understand this, this concept. And because of this concept, we know that we can communicate with everything, that we can ask our massage tables to help us in our healing, that we can ask the room that we're doing the healing in to help us. And we call this setting up the atmosphere, creating a healing and beneficent atmosphere for us to do our work in. But that all is based on the concept of animism, which is that everything is alive and conscious and can be communicated with. Another aspect of HooDoo is something called Ashe. And Ashe is the invisible spiritual power of nature. For those of you who have taken other courses with me, we use other culturally specific terms to describe this power of nature. But in the African tradition, Ashe is the power of nature, but it's also a signature. It's a signature of all life has a frequency or a vibration to it, that all things have a frequency or a vibration to them, and that some frequencies and vibrations are helpful to attract to us certain outlooks, certain outcomes that we would like in our life, and certain frequencies are better for other outcomes. This goes into the understanding of what herbs we use in our spell work, in our craft work, what incense we will burn, even what color of candle or what color of clothing we are going to wear when we perform our ritual or ceremony. It is all based on the frequency and vibration within the thing itself. And now you all might be starting to say, well, wait a second, this HooDoo thing sounds a whole lot like the New Age movement or other spiritual movements that are happening in the world and in our nation. And the truth is, HooDoo was the precursor to that in our country. It was a place where all disenfranchised peoples of the world could hide their information and their knowledge of mysticism and magic. Because we have to remember, the people who originally came to the New World from Europe, of course, the Spanish were coming here for wealth, but especially here in North America, in the United States, most of the people were Puritans. And Puritans had no real ritual, if we can call it that. They didn't have the ritual of the Mass that the Catholics had. They didn't have the saints. They didn't have these forms of folk magic inside of their religion. In fact, they looked down on all of this stuff as being devil worship, as being satanic. And because of that, the New World fared much worse than many other places or not the New World, but North America in particular, the United States, fared a lot worse for the preservation of traditional belief systems because of the puritanical ideas that all things were done in the name of one deity. And this one deity had this one name, and that was the entirety of the practice of the religion, was the honoring of the personality of that one name, and that all other things were wrong. So we do see that that was a real thing in this country, suppression of spiritual knowledge. Because of that, where it was welcomed was within the poor classes, and especially in the slave classes, because many people didn't think that they were even humans, and they had the belief that these people that they had enslaved were heathens to begin with anyway. So it was a very interesting time period for sure. But as I was saying earlier, these disenfranchised people only had each other to lean on. So the knowledge that they brought with them from these ancient worlds and cultures were so valuable to the continuance of their life and to give them an identity within this new world that they found themselves in. So it is very much like the New Way or the New Age movement, where little bits and pieces from all over kind of conglomerated together and created something beautiful and something powerful. And it's kind of the understanding that you take, if something works for you, you keep it, and if it doesn't, you throw it away. And in that way, many of the HooDoo practices that we know about were passed down. Another aspect of HooDoo and African spirituality is also an aspect of Native American spirituality, and in fact, I believe it is an aspect of all the traditional cultures of the world, but it's called Hiradan. And it is the art of learning directly from nature, of going to different places in nature and getting, once again, accustomed or introducing yourself to their ashe, their spiritual power, starting a communication with the animistic idea that you can communicate with that power, and learning that different places had the ability to affect different types of changes in our life. You might find a field that grew one of the greatest herbs, a very powerful medicine herb. You might be able to grow it in other fields, but maybe in this one region, it was extremely strong. And to understand that and to blend with nature, to learn directly from nature. And of course, I am actually talking about a language that we can learn and fall into. The practice of folk magic and HooDoo magic shows us the signature of nature itself, teaches us how these herbs, these colors, these materials, these minerals, these crystals affect us, and that they have a vibration and frequency that can be used to affect change in the world around us. One of the major elements of American folk magic and of what we call HooDoo or rootwork is African ritual magic. And that is the ceremonial language that HooDoos use to communicate with the spiritual world. They're formulas that have been passed down. And this is one of the most African elements that you will find within the tradition of HooDoo is the use of ritual, and how ritual changes the perspective, or creates a shift in the consciousness of the people performing the ritual, and how that shift of consciousness leads to new possibilities that were not available in the other form of consciousness. If that makes sense, it's almost like there's different gears or different levels to consciousness, and each one of these levels is particularly apt for creating certain types of phenomenon. And of course, all that was learned through the elements of nature. African magic is something that is based directly on the phenomenon of the sun moving through the sky. It's a way of studying what happens in our visual phenomenon. What is the difference between the rising sun, the morning sun, the noonday sun, the afternoon sun, and sunset? What kinds of different frequencies and vibrations do those phases of the day create within us? What kind of changes do they create? What times a day make you feel more comfortable and easy? What times a day are you full of energy? And of course, those things are a little different for all of us. But there are certain understandings that are there. There are certain universal phenomenon that happen throughout the movement of the day, throughout the movement of the cycles of the moon. Some people believe that the planets have absolutely no effect in our life, but the moon, our closest satellite, has a direct effect on the tide, high tide and low tide, through its gravitational influence and pull. And all of the things that allegorically water represents, the depths, the emotions, the unknown, the shadow, all of this is represented in water. And the moon is a orchestrating principle in this. As we all know, that there are more police on duty on nights of the full moon, because people seem to have an ability to get out of control on those nights in particular. This is not a fantasy or a fallacy. This is something that is documented and proven, that there are more accidents during the full moon, more emergency room visits. And this is one of the ways that the ashe of the moon plays upon our physical world. And so the ancient hoodoos learned to fall into the cycles of nature, and to emulate those cycles of nature to produce phenomenon that they would like to see in their life. Another aspect of what is known as hoodoo is Native American medicine practices. When the African conjurers, the African priests, if you will, shamans and wise people came to this continent, they were in a place that did not grow the same types of plants that they used in their homeland. So within their magic, within their initiation, within their ceremonies of puberty and maturity, within all of these things, they were not able to get the original herbs that they once used. And because they were closely connected with the Native American people, the Native Americans showed them new forms of ritual and magic, and taught them the herbs that are used here in America, and what herbs are used for the same purpose that these conjurers, what herbs could replace the herbs that these African conjurers once had in Africa. Another element that went into the creation of hoodoo, like I was saying, there is many Irish slaves in North America at the time when the African slave trade began. So these disenfranchised Irish people helped to teach some of their traditional forms of magic, what we today call Wicca or Witcha. They helped to teach those to these African conjurers and helped to create a form of magical thought that had not been here before that moment. And of course, also Spanish magical traditions. Of course, the Spanish were really saturated in Catholicism. So they, like so many other cultures, hid their traditional magics in the rituals and thoughts and understandings of Catholicism. So the Irish and the Spanish or European magical traditions also lent a lot to hoodoo. Then later, some German magical thought was introduced into it. Some Asian magical thought came into it. And of course, Kabbalist and Christian mystical traditions became a part of it. And from all these ingredients, a brand new stew of magic was created that we call hoodoo today. And hoodoo is not the magic of what we call sorcery today. It is not truly a tradition to try to take advantage or to use or to curse or to harm people. Hoodoo, voodoo, Santeria, obey, Sanse, and a host of others, including Rastafari, were all African traditions. They were all based to some degree on African magic and African spirituality, which was a spirituality of light. But these people were treated badly and abused. And they did discover, especially some of them, that the very same formulas and magics that can be used to heal can also be used to harm. And for an unempowered people, this could be a very attractive aspect. But for anyone who is truly steeped in the medicine ways of root work, witch doctoring, hoodoo, and voodoo, Santeria, would know that to harm someone is never a good use of spiritual power, and that there is truly a potential for you to receive retribution from the spiritual world for misusing power that has been shared with you and given to you by the spirits to help you develop and grow in your life. And that being said, I want to tell you all that hoodoo is a practitioner's art. It is something that has to be used. It is something that has to be practiced. It is no good, absolutely of no benefit to read testaments on magic and to absorb into your head magical formulas and magical ideas and understandings to be used sort of as playing cards or as baseball cards, as tokens of intellectual thought or of knowledge. Because the knowledge is not in the knowing, but in the application. Because hoodoo is an art. It is not a science. Though there is an element of science to it, It is actually an art. It is always changing. Frequencies are always changing, and we are always trying to find a new way of bringing all of this together in our life, and a new way of applying the magic toward our goals. So if you are not practicing the art of magic, you do yourself no real service in studying it. The only way to grow and to receive the benefits that magic can bring into your life is to practice it, is to apply it, is to use it to organize your reality, because that's what it is for. It is for organizing your reality, for seeing the forces around you and putting new vibrations around yourself to attain your goals. That is what magic is for. And through doing it, you become closer to nature. You gain a deeper understanding of frequency and vibration, of animism, of power, and what it truly is. And you learn a new way of appreciating life itself. So hoodoo, or any form of magic, is to be practiced, not studied, just for the kudos of learning it, because it's only truly mastered inside of the application. And that is a little bit about hoodoo. Now I want to talk a little bit about the tradition of hoodoo that I teach through the Soka Mune Ayu. It is a tradition of hoodoo that does very, very strongly retain African ritual. It also uses things such as the Psalms of the Bible. We use candles, candle magic. We use collar magic, and we learn to use herbs for their energetic vibration. One of the things that you will not ever receive within a Soke Mune Ayu hoodoo course is superstition. And yes, superstition is a very powerful and very large part of this hoodoo tradition. And I just want to explain one thing about superstition. Superstitions all start somewhere where they were true. Some spirit or group of spirits that worked with some individual decided to communicate with that individual through these kinds of omens. Such as if your amulet fell off the wall, trouble was coming, things like that. But to then take that and to apply it and to start believing that in all aspects. There's a big thing about brooms in hoodoo. And I have a friend who I once worked with, and he believed that if you handed him a broom, he would go to jail. And every time a broom touched him or he was handed a broom, this would happen to him. He would end up with legal trouble. And the idea is that I believe this was something that was passed down through his family, a belief system, because it was true for one person. But what I saw while working with my friend was that it wasn't necessarily true for him. But he would use it. He would apply energy anytime he got hit with a broom or anything like this, and he would apply energy toward that outcome. He would get his mind set that that was the outcome that was coming up, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy, because we are co-creators. And we all learn an individual and unique language with the spirit world. That's why it's so hard to interpret dreams and so hard to interpret omens, because the spirit world speaks differently with each of us. Though there are some universal symbols and some universal communications, the spirit world actually is uniquely tailored to each of us. So it's about learning our own particular language and how to interpret the omens that come to us in day-to-day life in a way that is not superstitious and is not based on other people's belief system. We must empower ourselves at all times and not give our power away to thoughts or even to belief systems that do not return power to us, if that makes sense. So many of you may be wondering why it is that I'm teaching a HooDoo course, or why it is that I find this subject so appealing. Well, within my life, there have been two spiritual traditions that have guided and helped me grow exponentially. Took me from basically being dirt poor to a place where I have gotten to travel the world to some degree, and I get to meet many, many people, and I get to develop relationships across this beautiful, beautiful country of ours. And those two traditions are the Native American tradition. In my case, it's the Andean tradition that comes from Peru, which is what I call my spiritual heart, my center that led me into these realms and helped me grow so much. And the African tradition, which has equally been a big part of my life. And these two traditions and the understandings of these two spiritual roads meet within the art of HooDoo. So I became very, very interested in HooDoo and in the forms of American folk magic. Because we do live in North America, and though herbs and things like this are prevalent nowadays, you can have Peruvian herbs sent to North America so that you could use a traditional Peruvian herbal formula or herbal magic to accomplish something. It is so much more available and so much more how to say, applicable to be able to just go into your cupboard, to go to the supermarket and pick up herbs that are equivalent to the ones in other places that other traditions use, and to be able to create our medicines here in the United States using herbs that grow naturally here is a very powerful thing. And all of that knowledge is contained within this American folk magic. One other thing that I think is uniquely interesting is that though in America all of this information was suppressed, of magical traditions, people were burnt at the stake and suffered all kinds of horrible tortures for performing magic, it is in another sense why certain slaves were brought into the home to take care of the children, because the slave masters of those plantations or those houses understood that that particular person knew how to perform herbal magic and medicine. And that if their children got sick, or even the slave masters got sick, they were then asked to perform these things. And then, of course, when those conditions were gone, it was once again supposed to be suppressed. So I hope that this, in the past hour here, you have gotten a new appreciation perhaps for what HooDoo is and how it has developed in the world. So that concludes my particular presentation for this class. So it's back to you, Hank.
Thank you very much, Zane. That's it gave me a whole new understanding of HooDoo personally, and that's one reason I named this webinar the way I did. Take the voodoo out of HooDoo. It wasn't aiming at one particular cultural aspect to be taken out, but just the misunderstanding that seems to have been developed in the media and in the common knowledge of what people think they know, and it completely changed my perception for sure. I wanted to, and my apologies, I know a lot of you will be listening to this on the replay because I apparently had some sort of setting incorrect, so my apologies for everyone who is watching this after the fact, but I'm sure it will be just as powerful. We are having a 3-weekend HooDoo course with Zane hosted at Goddess Elite. The weekends are May 13th, 14th, and 15th. You can see them here on your screen, where it's going to be all about spiritual tradition. And then June 10th through the 12th on working the magic. And then finally, the formulas of magic, mediumship, and more. And that's going to be July 9th, 10th, and 11th. And I don't know if Zane, maybe you could speak just briefly to give more of the essence of what each one of those weekends will entail for people.
Oh, yes, I would love to. And I did understand that with the title there. I thought it was a very intriguing title for this class, and it spoke to the heart of the fears that people had of HooDoo. So I thought that was a wonderful way to present it. The courses will follow a certain type of developmental curve, where each weekend we will be learning and building upon what we learned the previous weekend or the previous day. And it will really be about learning to awaken in yourself a way of thinking magically and a way of applying magical thought to your life to organize the world around you. We will also be connecting with and learning to serve our ancestors, which is a very big part, and it comes directly from the African tradition, though other traditions also honor their ancestors. There's a real misconception with when looking at the African traditions, and the idea is that within them we are worshiping our ancestors, and this is not the truth. What we are actually doing is we're learning to have a relationship with our ancestors on the other side, and how our ancestry loves us and wants to help take care of us, and they want to see us succeed, and they want to help us to succeed. So we will be learning to do various ways of serving our ancestors. We will also learn ways of cleansing our home of what we sometimes call negative spirit or negative energies. We will be learning how to create mojo bags and certain types of spells that we can use to help ourselves and others, and how to address the situation and figure out which herbs, which candles, which scents, which oils to use in that particular situation for the outcome that we are trying to achieve. We will also touch on mediumship. I want you all to know that mediumship is not really a part, it's not a huge part of the HooDoo tradition. Connecting with our ancestors, our deceased loved ones, is a part, but bringing them through us and channeling things like this are not as large a part of the HooDoo tradition, but yet it is still a part, because we have to learn how to open a very strong communication with the other side and how to understand what that other side is saying to us. And to use that information in our life. So there will be some of that. We will do a little bit about that. And then we will also look into magical formulas that are applied in HooDoo and how to use them in our day-to-day life, how to really start living the life from a magical perspective, which brings the passion and the lust back into life, because you suddenly start to feel empowered again in life. And that's a very big part of what conjuring is for, is to help us feel empowered and strengthened. Anyone who has had a passing interest in magic of any form, including Wicca, or ceremonial magic, or the Western Hermetic magics, I think you would love this course, because in fact, Hermeticism and the Egyptian magical systems, those are African systems of magic, and those are African thought, African ritual, and we will see those within the HooDoo work. Also, many people do not really understand this, but even the Jewish tradition is an African tradition. The Christian tradition is an African tradition. All of these traditions have roots in that homeland of Africa. They all share concepts and ideas and formulas and ways of ritual embodiments and movements. So anyone who has practiced any form of magic and would like to have a deeper understanding, and even would like to truly start to live a magical life, this would be the perfect course for them to attend.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And the other thing, I know that a lot of people might be watching this even after the fact, because it will be on YouTube and everything. If you have watched this video and the class has already occurred, you can contact Zane to see maybe about having your own class and having him come out. I believe his email is donzanekerfman, all lowercase, @gmail.com. Or you could certainly contact me through the website, and I can put you in touch if you're interested in having Zane teach either HooDoo or some form of shaman class.
I would love to. Please don't be shy. If any of you have questions, I mean, this is a wonderful forum to meet and to communicate with people virtually. It takes some of the pomp and circumstance out of these meetings so that we can get to the real heart. And any of you, don't be shy. If you have a question, or you would like to see if I could come to your town or whatever, send me an email. It might take me a few days to a week to get back to you, but I am more than happy to entertain that. And if it's possible, Hank, if you could even put my email address perhaps on the YouTube page that this video will be on.
Absolutely, and also on the Expo site, it will be there as well, and the contact information. So I want to thank everybody who is on the call or will be watching this on the replay for attending. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Zane or myself.
Very good. Many